Why, hello there. It's Edward here, and you're in fact listening to the Right on Track podcast.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you are in the world, and welcome to episode 62 of the Right on Track podcast. My name is Connor Jonas, and I will be your anchor for today's episode. You'll also hear from Tom Denham. Joining him will be guest host Sea Swine. After that is Tom Denham's Loco Nation, where he will take you into the mountains of New South Wales, Australia, on the Blue Mountaineer. After that, you'll join Lachlan in the Model Train Corner as he reviews the J50. Before we begin our segments, I'd like to say a heartfelt thank you to M, who you would have heard anchoring last week's episode, as well as assisting myself co-hosting at the end of Series 7. Now, I'm afraid that M is needing to take a break at the moment from the podcast due to personal matters, so we here at Right on Track give them much love and support. Thank you, M. But now it is time for the reviews, where we'll hear from Tom Denham and Sea Swine as they review Series 8's Thomas to the Rescue and Henry and the Wishing Tree.
And it's time for the reviews, the part of the podcast where we talk about Thomas the Tank Engine himself and what he's getting up to on his many adventures in the TV series, Thomas and Friends. And we're up to Season 8, and we're reviewing two fantastic episodes this episode, but I'm not joined alone. We were supposed to hear Connor and Em this episode, but unfortunately they've had some other stuff come up. So with me today, I have none other than Sea Swine. Sea Swine, welcome.
Hello again. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, last time you were on the podcast, Sea Swine, we got you to talk about your favourite fishman, Arthur.
Yes.
And this time we are bringing you on to talk about two episodes from Season 8, which are Thomas to the Rescue and Henry and the Wishing Tree. And in the first clip from the first episode that we're going to hear, Thomas is confronted by Diesel, Devious Diesel himself, where he's telling him how he's going to help Mavis at the quarry.
But when Thomas arrived at the quarry, he had a nasty surprise. Oh, it's you, Oil Diesel. What are you doing here? I'm here to help Mavis, puffed Thomas proudly. Steamies can't help, not like a diesel, he sniffed. That's not true, said Thomas crossly, and he began working at once.
Yes, Diesel doesn't very much like the idea of Thomas helping out at the quarry. He thinks that diesels are the only ones who could be really useful. Now, Sea Swine, what were your first impressions of this episode? When did you first see this?
So a lot of this era I kind of missed as a kid. The way I think I saw sort of seasons 1 to 4, and then I kind of dropped off. So when I kind of got back into the fandom, these were like quote unquote new episodes for me. So it was like, oh, okay, like I can see how it's going. I'm going to be honest, I kind of forgot about this episode. I mean, like, it's fine, but it's just kind of like a retread of that whole, like, diesels versus steamy debate. And I think, like, Thomas feels a little bit too babyish. He's a little bit spineless. Like, Diesel's words are, like, Diesel's just being a git, and his words, like, hurt him. I'm like, this doesn't feel like Thomas. I think Thomas would have a little bit more bite to him.
So, in the episode, Thomas is sent to Farquhar Quarry to help Mavis and Diesel with an important shipment of stone that needs to be taken to the docks. And when Thomas comes to the quarry, Diesel really doesn't want him to be there. But when a new arrival of fuel comes for the diesels delivered by Salty, the fuel that is given to them has had water leak in, and it causes all kinds of trouble for all the Diesels all across the island of Sodor, such as Diesel, Mavis, Ari, Bert, Salty, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's up to Thomas to save the day by getting new fuel for all the Diesels and making them run again. And they get the important shipment of stone ready just in time. And that is Thomas the Rescue. I got to say, when I first saw this was my first ever experience with Series 8 as an episode. So it's the first time I saw this new 60 frames per second for an episode, which was, I don't know, like it wasn't what I was expecting coming off Series 7. And it was the first time I experienced the new score as well. It's definitely a drastic change from what we saw before, isn't it?
Yeah, the way it looks and how it feels. Like, I think like the way I watched it, I basically binged like years worth of Thomas. So like it all kind of like squashed together, sort of thing. Like all kind of like ran in. I mean, like the way it's lit, it feels less realistic. It's a little bit flatter. It feels more like a kid's show. They're not really pushing anything.
You said before that you can tell this is kind of being dumbed down a little bit to maybe a lower, I guess, age of audience, and it kind of feels like
Tom. Yeah, I was gonna say Thomas feels like a little kid again. Like before, like I feel like if Diesel was being rude to Thomas, he would be rude back. He would cause trouble, and it would spiral out of control. He would be sarky back. A little bit sarcastic back, but like Diesel kind of just says, "Oh, if you're not careful, Top Hat's gonna scrap you," and he takes it to heart, and he's very kind of wimpy and glum this episode. He has his little sad face on an awful lot. He just feels very spineless and childlike in this one.
He does. Where's the Thomas that we had in Better Late Than Never? That's Thomas that I want here, who talks back to Diesel.
Yeah. I mean, like, his sad face is very cute. It is a very cute little, like, pouty sad face. Especially that one shot where it's him in the quarry shed all on his own at night, and he looks so small and timid. But, he looks cute, but this isn't Thomas.
One of the best shots in this episode, which, only goes for a mere number of seconds, it's a blink and you miss it moment, is when Thomas is thinking of all the scrap engines in the smelter's yard. There's something very eerie about
that. It kind of comes out of nowhere. It's just it feels very old school. We're used to this kind of season being very bright and colourful and silly, and then oh no, here's a pile of dead engine bodies that Thomas is daydreaming about.
Yeah, and we said before that it feels like this is treaded ground, and it's kind of, I think, assures that this season as well does feel like a bit of a rebrand or a revival of what's come before. They're reinitiating the Steamies versus Diesels patriarchy that they've got going on here.
Yeah, it just feels very oh, we're doing this again. You guys have not settled this. It's been years.
The one thing that I think distraught me as a kid, the great sequence, by the way, where we see all the Diesels start to break down because of the fuel being poisoned with water, and you see Diesel's face turn green and there's smoke billowing out. And then the same happens to Mavis.
The way the smoke looks, it's very over the top, but I love how thick and liquid it looks. It's a really gross looking smoke. I don't know what it is, but I feel like on set it was probably very noxious. But yeah, it's just very over the top and disgusting black smoke.
It is, and you have this gross gurgling sound to go with it as well.
Oh.
It was great because this sequence, you saw all the main Diesels, but what really, I don't know, got me as a kid is we saw Diesel, we saw Mavis, then Ari, Bird, and Salty, and then I paused and leaned in and went, okay, where's Boko? okay, where's Derek? Where are they? And then there's just kind of silence. There's no Rusty scene at all. And I'm kind of like, this is when I realized that the scale of the cast was narrowing down to a very small handpicked few.
Oh, but could you imagine the smoke with Rusty? Because it's already a lot of smoke for like the standard gauge models. It would be like so much. Like Rusty's lost in it.
He'll go missing until they fix his fuel. So eventually Thomas saves the day by getting the fuel drums ready for the other engines. One little subtlety that I do love is when they load up the fuel trucks with that stop motion and then the music kind of goes in time with it. That was a little intricacy that I did like from this episode.
Yeah, that was a cute bit. Yeah, there's like another little bit I like where it's Thomas arrives at the quarry and the narration is like, but Thomas was in for a nasty surprise, and it just cuts to Diesel, and I don't know, it just amuses me. It's just like, oh no, here's Diesel.
It's great. And one of the really interesting things about this episode that I only found out probably years later is that Bill and Ben were supposed to be in it as well.
Oh, I feel like they would have put the water in the fuel.
They would be the ones
it
behind
was them all along. That's why Boko's not there, because he's found out what's actually happened and he's gone to chase after Bill and Ben.
That's
Tell him off for nearly
ends.
killing him and his friends.
The one piece of evidence that we have to support this is that one shot that we see in the Calling All Engines song, Trying to Do Things Better, where you see Bill or Ben pulling out of the quarry with their line of trucks.
Ah.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel like that would have been like a lot of characters, because we have like the majority of the Diesels and then also Bill and Ben and Thomas. It's a lot going on.
Well, I could see if they had Bill and Ben in the episode, maybe what they would have originally done, rather than Thomas going to deliver the fuel to all the Diesels, Thomas goes to Diesel and Mavis, and then Bill goes to Ari and Bert, and then Ben goes to Salty and delivers it all to them, so they divide and conquer.
Yeah, I guess with Thomas doing it all, it's kind of like it's a stronger point that like, yeah, he's a special engine. He helps all of the Diesels, and then like he even helps Diesel, who was like rude to him at the end. And I also noticed that Diesel doesn't apologize for being mean. He admits that Thomas is a very special engine, but like he doesn't say sorry.
Yeah, I know that as well. It's it's a funny way for Diesel to remark, and I think this is the first kind of footnote that builds up to Calling All Engines, which comes later this year, that this was released. It's interesting seeing all that happen because again, it's trodden ground, and that they felt the need to capitalize that into a movie, which I feel like Magic Railroad already kind of did. So it's interesting seeing them doing that again. So I feel like we've discussed as much as we can discuss for this episode. If you were to give this episode a score out of 10, what would it be?
Be like a 6 or a 7. Like, it's not bad. There's like a few little bits that I like. But it's not really anything great. I don't like that it retreads like the whole Diesels versus Steamies, and Thomas feels so weak. He doesn't feel like he's in character. He's a bit too timid.
Going back to Thomas being so spineless and meek, it makes me think of that meme where there's the dog who looks really frail, and then there's the same dog, but he's got the really strong body.
Yes.
That's exactly what this episode is.
I also love that in like Diesel's trick is not really a trick. He literally just shoves Thomas. It's violence. That's his trick. He just punches Thomas.
Diesel woke up and chose violence.
Yeah, he did.
I think I'm going to give this episode a 6 as well. I think like it's all right. I almost feel like there's another episode in this season called Thomas Saves the Day, And this one's called Thomas to the Rescue. But because Fat Controller says, Thomas, you saved the day, I almost feel like this one deserves that title more. I don't know, maybe Thomas saves the day multiple times in Series 8. But I feel like there's interesting-ish things going on, but I think there's a lot more left to be desired at the same time.
Yeah. I feel like Saves the Day does kind of fit a little bit more, because he's like, he's helping all the diesels out. If he didn't, they'd all be stuck and everyone else has to do all the work.
That's right. So the next episode that we're going to discuss today is Henry and the Wishing Tree. And in the clip that we're going to hear, Henry stops by the forest and notices some children hanging around an old tree.
Henry stopped at the water tank on the edge of the forest. Children were standing by one of the trees. "What are those children doing?" Henry asked Thomas. "That's the old Sodor wishing tree," said Thomas. "They must be making a wish." "A wishing tree," gasped Henry. "How wonderful! Do you think it would make my wish come true?" asked Henry. "It might," said Thomas, and he puffed away.
You know, the one thing about this episode that really stuck out to me that was quite odd is that the voice that Michael Angelis gave Henry in this story feels oddly a little bit like James.
Yes, I noticed that on rewatch. I was like, oh, hang on. Like, that's not quite right for Henry.
It does make me wonder, like, what were the directorial notes that Angelis was given for the delivery of each character and how much that would have changed between series 6, 7, and 8, because it feels like it's a little bit all over the place, like in terms of continuity of delivery, which is quite funny and a bit off-brand for Angelis as well.
Yeah. Although maybe that's the deep lore that it was actually James and the Wishing Tree.
Oh, we've unopened a can of
but
worms here.
I feel like that would be a different episode. He would he'd be quite vain. He'd wish for like to look nice and be pretty. He'd still want the Express, but it'd be a different episode.
I can actually see this working. So James will be the one who is gullible enough to make the wish with the wishing tree, gets the Express, but because he's been hanging out with trucks so often, he gets uppity and bounces the coaches around. And Henry is the one being knowledgeable about the forest who tells him about the wishing tree. This makes so much more sense.
Yeah, that's the rewrite. It's the rewrite.
Done. Someone go make it. So, Henry and the Wishing Tree is a bit of a mirroring story between the big engines, Henry and Gordon. It spends a bit of time showing how Gordon loves to pull the Express and Henry loves pulling trucks through the forest and how he finds it peaceful. But he can sometimes get lonely. So when he finds a wishing tree in the forest that he so loves, he then decides to make a wish to pull the Express because he wants to be as grand as Gordon. And that evening, the Fat Controller bestows him with the opportunity to pull the Express. But then, Swine, something does happen when he starts to pull the Express. What is that?
So he's so used to pulling trucks and being a bit rough. He is not very careful with the coaches. And he pulls them too hard, and we see clip a bit later on that like people are kind of jumbled up on top of each other. They've been pushed around too much. He's really out of practice with his passenger skills. And I think like my favorite bit in this episode is when he backs down too hard onto the buffet coach. And there's just a shot of all the cakes and food flying everywhere, and there's like the comedics of glass smashing noises. It's great. He's just so cute. He's just so big and clumsy.
I will say that is a great sequence, and it's not often we see inside the coaches like that, so it's quite novel seeing that. And what happens from there is that Henry decides that he no longer wants to pull the Express, and then he tries to get his wish back to pull freight again. But then the Fat Controller reminds him that wishing trees don't run railways, and that's the Fat Controller's job. And then Gordon comes out of repair, and they both get their respective jobs back. And that's essentially the episode. I I think there's a bit more to this episode than the one that we just previously reviewed. I think in terms of production, it's a bit more interesting as well. One of the things I particularly noticed as I was rewatching this episode was how the music kind of interweaves into this episode, especially when Henry makes the wish, or when he's trying to wish back again. There are some beautiful moments where the music plays really well into this episode. And I think one that really took me by surprise was when Henry notices that Gordon is being repaired at the fitter's yard. And there's this kind of deep, very almost emotional music that plays underneath. And it feels almost a bit slightly too mature, I guess, in tone for Thomas.
Yeah, I kind of like it because we get to see sort of their like friendship. Although Gordon is so rude in the first bit, that Henry just pulls up and he's like, "Keep your freight away from my passengers," and then Henry's like, "But it's only logs." And like, yeah, he's a little bit like rude to him, and then like Henry realizes that like his wish has, quote unquote, caused Gordon to need repairs, to need a whole new boiler. But like, I really like that he suddenly realizes like, no, I've wished it, I've hurt my friend.
Yeah, it's actually quite a nice bit, and I'm glad that you pointed on that, because I think I think later in the season it's not often that we see Gordon and Henry interacting the way they do, and I think it's like, even though there's a bit of a rivalry going on here, I think it's always nice seeing them together.
Yeah, I think they're almost like brothers sort of thing. Like, they get along. Sometimes they fight. This is like an example of Gordon being too poncy and posh and mean to his brother. But yeah, I like the dynamic between the pair of them.
I think one of the conflicting things about this episode is we get the impression that Henry has never pulled coaches before, where he has, and we've seen him do it a lot of times.
Yeah, like it's a bit odd. Like I guess like the idea is maybe he's like a little bit out of touch with like doing passenger runs. Maybe he's been like given goods work for like a few months and he's kind of forgotten it.
It's one of the, as I was researching to find out more about this episode, one of the really interesting little bits of information I found is that in the Romanian title for this episode, rather than being called Henry and the Wishing Tree, it's called Thomas and the Wishing Tree. And then you kind of have to take a moment to roll your eyes.
They got the wrong engine, like he's I think he appears for like a minute with like that controller. And that's it.
Yeah, but it's all about him throughout this season.
It's all Thomas.
It's all Thomas, and it's all ever will be. One of the interesting things I do find about this episode, and others in particular though, and I think we start to see essence of this around series 6 mainly, is the writers gravitate to particular episodes for each token character and uses those episodes to build on them. So for instance, a big one for Percy is Thomas Percy in the post train, and Percy's job is now taking the mail, which he does ever so frequently. And I guess for Thomas, it's stories like Thomas and the Breakdown Train. But for Henry, like what they've used here is Henry's Forest, which is conflictingly Reverend Audrey's least favourite Henry depiction. So it's interesting that the creative team decided to go for this one to, I guess, personify Henry in this new era.
Yeah, I as much as that episode is like quote unquote wrong and goes against railway law, I do like that Henry has like a thing for trees and like nature. I think it's cute. He's the big green engine with a green thumb.
Yeah.
And I like it. I have like an issue with the tree itself. It doesn't look that special. It looks like every other tree. And I kind of wish they'd made it like look a little bit like more interesting. A couple of close-ups of like the kids. Because I think like I've seen wishing trees in person, and it's usually like a tree where you like write a little wish on a bit of paper or like a rag and you tie it to the branch, and it's like, oh yeah, it's like a cute thing. But it's just a tree. a very boring tree.
What I want to know is how the wishing tree became the wishing tree. I feel like there's some deep Sodor folklore about how this happened that we're yet to know.
Proteus planted it.
With his bare buffers.
Yeah, he just like put the little seed in there, and then I was like, okay, I've grown a tree. It's just gardening.
So, by and large, this episode encapsulates a lot of different, I guess, elements from Thomas's history and gives us something that feels slightly on brand, but also a bit kind of, it gives us something slightly, I guess, kind of lower tier than probably what we're expecting from a new season of Thomas. But considering everything that we've spoken about today, what would you rank Henry and the Wishing Tree?
Maybe like a 7, like a strong 7. I like that it features, Henry and Gordon, a little bit of their dynamic. I really like the stupid cake flying everywhere. It's amusing. One thing I will say about this episode is I really don't like Henry's faces in it. They do not look great, and the wishing face, which I think is like a sneezing face, like pursed lips and like crunched up eyes. It looks really weird. It's like distracting. Like, oh no, I think I maybe would have preferred like a sleeping face as his wishing face. Like he's closing his eyes and he's like gently wishing, not like blowing bubbles or whatever the face is meant to represent.
It does look a bit off here. It does indeed. I think I'm going to have to give this episode a 6.5. Like, it doesn't do it amazingly for me. But I think there's enough here that I guess kind of holds my attention for the 6 or so minutes that it goes for. It's nice to see a Henry episode every once in a while. And I think whilst his character isn't all there, I guess, in terms of delivery of his voice and everything, it's still an all right episode.
Yeah, it's just like a little bit above average.
That's right. C-Spine, thank you so much for joining us for this review. Is there anything before we head off that you'd like to plug or promote that you're working on?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm always just like drawing bits and pieces. I'm kind of wanting to get more into 3D modeling. I have posted a couple of faces that I've done for people, and I want to like get more into that. Because that's like my new outlet, I think. But mostly it's just art. When I'm not busy, when I'm not full up with work.
And whenever you do get the time to do it, all your drawings are fantastic, and the work that you've been doing with Choco as well, with the 3D faces engines, has been fantastic as well.
Oh yeah, we're like the dream team. If you need an engine that looks like a big, strong dude, we're here for you.
Beard supremacy, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, beards. More engines with beards. Get out here, beard haters.
And in episode 63 of Right on Track, back in the review seats, Connor will be back and he'll be joined by Parry, and they will be reviewing Thomas Saves the Day and Jane Gets a New Coat. But in the meantime, I've been Denham.
And I've been Sea Swine.
And you've been listening to the reviews. Have a good one.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Mike O'Donnell, one of the composers of the original Thomas the Tank Engine theme, and I'm here to tell you that I have released a selection of re-recorded themes and songs from the classic shows in a series of albums called The Engine Themes. These albums include a variety of classic themes and songs from the original TV series, as well as a few new compositions. You can purchase these albums on CD or digital download, as well as posters and pin badges. Have a look online at modmusic.co.uk. And for a special offer for Right on Track listeners, you can use the special code ROT20 for a 20% discount on all digital downloads. Be sure to enter the code when making your purchase. Thank you for your support and happy listening. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, Denham and Sea-Swine, for your thoughts on Thomas to the Rescue and Henry and the Wishing Tree. I personally really like that they brought back Series 3, Henry's Forest, and Henry's love of the forest in that episode. Now it is time for Tom Denham to take you to notable places in the railway world in Loco Nation. This week he'll be visiting the Blue Mountains of Australia.
G'day, how are you? Tom Denham here. Welcome to another installment of Loco Nation, the part of the podcast where I go on a bit of an adventure. But what's exciting about today's episode, it's my first in-the-flesh visit to a railway of sorts that we're going to be visiting, which is really cool. Today, we're going to be travelling on the East Coast Heritage Rail Tours group on a trip called the Blue Mountaineer, which is going all the way to Lithgow, which is about 110 kilometres out of Sydney. It's going to be great, so do buckle in for quite a ride. Okay, so I've arrived at Sydney Central. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. The train is set to depart at about 8:55, but they've asked us to be here at 8:30. I'm yet to see the train. I'm about to walk up to the platform. All that I know is that it's been diesel hauled and it's got a heritage consist, which is really cool. But other than that, I'm in for a bit of a surprise today. I'm yet to go to the Blue Mountains, so I'm really excited about that. But let's see what they've got. If you just heard that in the background, the guard has blown his whistle, waved the flag. We're off, we're leaving Sydney Central. Just about a minute short of our 8:55 departure, but we are on the way. But if you're interested in the indicative timetable, we're going to be stopping at Strathfield, Parramatta, Blacktown, Penrith, all within the suburbia of Sydney, and then going through Zalora, Katoomba, Medlow Bath, and stopping at Lithgow. Quite a long journey. I reckon we're probably going to get to Lithgow by about midday or thereabouts, so got my coffee, got my view. I'm gonna sit back and enjoy the ride. The Blue Mountaineer departs central and takes you through the west of Sydney across the Cumberland Plain before ascending the steep grades of the Blue Mountains. Winding through valleys and along ridgelines, you can witness the sandstone cliffs and canyons and see the forest within. Let's talk about the train itself. We're being hauled by a New South Wales Class 48 diesel locomotive, not to be confused with the British one. It's got a Coco wheel configuration for anyone that's interested in that kind of area, but it's hauling 3 rather beautiful heritage restored carriages. I was quite surprised. I was assuming it was going to be a lot more modern, but these carriages are the likes of probably what would be hauled by a steam loco. Beautiful wooden panels, beautiful seating, and makes the journey a more authentic one. I really am so far enjoying seeing people react to the train as it goes past, because normally people are used to seeing the modern electric suburban trains along this line, and seeing something a bit different does make people catch what's going past. It's really cool to see, and it's really nice to see lots of people waving and smiling at it. Even though it's not a steam train, it still garners that attention, which is really cool. We're slowly going through the suburbs, and I feel once we hit Penrith, I think we're going to be moving into a bit more country area. That's where it's going to get really exciting. The East Coast Heritage Rail Group offer a variety of tours, but I decided to take this one because the Blue Mountains seemed really appealing in my mind. It's really cool hearing about the stuff they do, and they are really trying to promote the idea of heritage rail trips on suburban train lines. It's really cool to see, and a lot of people get a kick out of this. There was a really lovely mix of people on the train that day, some retirees, some families, and some people who just love trains, and I think that made a really authentic experience for the journey there and back. We're definitely hitting country now, and so far I'm having a really, really great time. The views, you have to come here to really soak it all in. There's trees and mountains and cliff edges for as far as the eye can see, which is so, as a city dweller, it's so, I guess, kind of enamoring just looking at this and just taking in all the beauty. I've been sitting in a compartment with an older couple who came on the journey because they love doing rail journeys, and it's been really nice to kind of see through their perspective and to see why they came here and what they're getting out of it as well. And every time we've gone through a tunnel, there's been such a real thrill. And what I've been told by one of the railway conductors is that we're about to go through a series, I think about 10 tunnels, so that's going to be really exciting. You're definitely going to hear a report on that before or after it happens. The carriages that we're in had windows that could easily be opened, and this made the experience to see the Blue Mountains and the vistas all the more entertaining, and you could really soak in all the fresh air that was around us. There was also a buffet car on board that provided light refreshments as well as drinks of choice, so it was really nice to have the commodity to go up, grab a coffee or grab a glass of wine here and there across the journey. We arrived at Lithgow at about 1 o'clock, which gave us enough ample time to really explore the town, grab something to eat at a local cafe and potter around until the train left at about 3 o'clock. What I actually failed to notice before this trip that this is a New South Wales train link operating line, so this is used for regular passenger services that go into Sydney. Quite a long trek if you want to make that leg of the journey, but if you love Lithgow, if you love the Blue Mountains, I can't blame you. I can see why. Now, I did promise I'll tell you about the series of tunnels that we went through. I think I counted about 7 or 8 tunnels that cut through the mountain. And what's really interesting, we're back on our up journey now, but what's really interesting is that the lower that we went into the valley that took us into Lithgow, the moisture in the air became a lot more denser. And as we came through the tunnels that got closer to Lithgow, you could see water forming around the outsides of all the tunnels. But what I've noticed on our return journey, we're heading back to Sydney now, we're on the return journey, what I've noticed is that because of the hour of rain that we've had, a lot more water has formed, and I'm not too sure what's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting as we hit these tunnel entrances. I don't know if there's going to be some kind of... yeah, I think there is. That was a curtain of water in front of the tunnel entrance that splashed the train. We then journeyed back from Lithgow to Sydney Central again. Overall, it was really relaxed. I think everyone was pretty happy to grab a beverage of their choice and watch the serene view pass by, and I, for one, was happy to join everybody in that. Alright, I've just gotten back to Sydney Central. It's 6:35 in the evening. Wow, I'm on a kick. That was such a great day. There was a lot of things to see. The company on the train was great. We were well looked after. I had a fabulous time. If you want to see the Blue Mountains in a great way, this is what I'd recommend. Definitely get on down and give it a try. This train is for everybody. I certainly enjoyed it. Yeah, on to the next adventure. If you would like to find out more about today's trip, you can visit eastcoastheritagerail.com.au.
Thank you, Denham, for that second instalment of Loco Nation. As always, we've now reached that point in the podcast where we have our musical interlude. This week, we'll be listening to Paralyzer by Herman. This is Right on Track.
To me and my train, I wish it was cooling me, but so far has not been good. It's been, and I feel awkward as I should. Well, I'm not paralyzed, but I seem to be struck by you. I wanna make you move because you're standing still. If your body matches what your eyes can do, you'll probably move right through me on my way to you. Not paralyzed, but I seem to be struck by you. I wanna make you move because you're standing still. If your body matches what your eyes can do, you'll probably move right through me on my way to you.
That was Herman's Paralyzer. You're listening to the Right on Track podcast. Now it is time for Lachlan to teach us more about the model railway world in the Model Train Corner.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Lachlan's Modelling Corner. Today we have a very special locomotive. This is brought to you by my very good friend Nick from @Coffeepot Creations. Shout out to him, thank you very much. Not that I'm keeping this is more of a commission job, which I haven't started yet, so it's going to be perfect to review it. So, we have the J50 tank engine in its LNER unlined black guise, number 585.
Every day, the fat director came to the station to catch his train, and he always nodded to Thomas and said, morning, Thomas.
Now, to begin, it's very heavy and it's very long looking. It's a very beefy, very brutish tank engine. And you don't really get that with a lot of other tank engines where they look a bit refined or curvy. This one is just big and boxy and intimidating almost. I don't know. That's just kind of the character it gives me. This is the one with the extended coal bunker as well, so it's got a great big hopper looking thing on the back, which I think looks quite nice. It's got the red buffer beam, sprung buffers, all sorts of lamp irons. It's got the lamp iron on the smoke box as well. Handrails all the way along. Even handrails in places where it doesn't need to be, I don't think. Like on top of the tank on one side. I don't imagine people are going to be working on that sort of area unless you're operating on top of the tank for the water filler caps, which are these great big bulbous oval looking things on each side. There is a little hole above the front driving wheel on each side to reach into the valve gear, which is modelled actually, and the reverser rod. On the cab, we do have the whistle mounted to the front rather than on top of the boiler. A very fine pair of metal safety valves as well on top of the boiler. There's a great big chunky dome which looks very nice on it. It operates very nicely as well. It's very nice and smooth. It does have a great big chunky flywheel inside it, so you get some really smooth running out of that. And it can haul a buttload of wagons as well because of the sheer weight of it.
Thomas called out, "We're stopping! We're stopping!" And the trucks answered back, "No, no, 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 no."
It also has these nice, great, big looking glasses on the front of the cab, but weirdly enough, because of the size of the coal bunker, you got these really, really small windows on the back, which I don't even know if a figure, if you put it in there, would be tall enough to see through. They'd need a tiny little stepladder to climb up and look out the back if they're reversing, or, just hang out the side. Which, of course, it's got these great big doors, very large, and you can see straight into the cab, and you can see all the details been picked out in all the colours. Red reversing rod, all sorts of gold piping. It's very nice in there, especially because of how large it is. That's probably the thing about this whole entire locomotive, this whole tank engine. Even though tank engines are very small, this one is huge. This one is very large. Everything about it's large. Large tanks, large dome, large doors, large windows. Everything is just huge about it. Another neat little thing is on each side of the coal hopper, it does have the builder's plate painted on each side. The only legible thing you can see really is the number, or 585. Down below the running plate, you got the sanders in the middle wheel, and you do have the cylinder drain cocks underneath the cab. Also steps to the cab and to the hole that I mentioned earlier into the valve gear, and also steps up to the front on the top of the buffer beam.
Well, Thomas, I've heard all about it, and I'm very pleased with you. You're a really useful engine.
Okay, so I think that about does it for Nick Coffeepot Creations J50 tank locomotive. Thank you so much for letting me do things, commissioned your beautiful J50 tank locomotive. It's been very fun just observing it on my desk at the moment. This has been a pretty quick review, but I think I'll leave it at that. Cheers, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thomas, in return, always whistles.
Thank you, Lachlan, for teaching us about that model of the industrious little tank engines, the J50s. But now I'm afraid it's that time of the show where we must say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 62 of the Right on Track podcast. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Right on Track. This podcast was hosted by Connor Jonas, Tom Parry, Lachlan Kyle, M. Taylor, and Tom Denham. The audio producers for this podcast were Jason Evans, Harry Hughes, Ashley DeGroot, and Frederick French Prounce. The supervising producers are Connor Jonas and Tom Parry. The executive producer is Tom Denham. Visit rightontrackpodcast.org for more information plus bonus material, and be sure to follow us on social media. On Facebook at facebook.com/rightontrackthomaspodcast, on Twitter at OnTrackThomas, and Instagram at rightontrackpodcast.